Now, Alistair, you have just returned from the Caribbean Rocks for the Love of the Caribbean that they had in New York City. And that is one of the ways, I suppose, that the music festival was promoted there.
Yes, certainly.
And also, it is a trust to promote our local artists. One of the ways, people have called for greater participation of our local artists on the show. What is your response to that?
Well, first of all, I want to say that the music festival was not set up primarily to promote the local artists. However, because it is an international festival, and so we are charged with it is really a marketing initiative. And so obviously, because it's a marketing initiative, we'll have to ensure that the artists we engage each year have that drawing appeal. They're headliner, want a better word, and we have bought many of those. Those are the artists have that appeal that will draw persons to the island for the festival. However, as a committee, we felt that we have an obligation to promote our local artists, because there's quite a few of them here on the island, and they have produced some phenomenal stuff, I must say. And I want to add also that over the years, since we've started including the local artists on the festival, I don't think there have ever been a year when they embarrassed us. I mean, they have lived up to every expectation. They have punched above their weight in terms of performing on the same stage with some of their colleagues from the region and even international. And so, I'm particularly proud of the level at which they performed over the years and so on. So, because we want to ensure that our local artists are well positioned and could walk away from the festival, if nothing else, learning something extra about the business and so on, we have tried to engage them in other ways and to give them opportunities in order for them to further promote themselves and at the same time promote the music of St. Kitts. So this past weekend, as part of Caribbean Week, and Caribbean Week is an annual initiative by the Caribbean Tourism Organization, and they had the annual event in New York, and to climax the event, they teamed up with Tempo to put on Caribbean Rocks New York, and this is Tempo's 10th anniversary, incidentally. And so they had a Caribbean showcase that featured a number of artists from across the region. We were able to get Tempo to agree to include one of our local artists in exchange, of course, for us including one of Tempo's artists on our festival this year. That person will be performing on Friday night, and we'll have say a bit more about that later now. But on this occasion, we were able, the Ministry of Tourism were able to take Mr. Bagnall to New York, and he gave an awesome performance at Tempo Rocks New York. Those of you who are in tune with social media, Facebook and so on, you would have seen some little snippets of what he did and so on. And considering he were not able to take his band because the process did not allow for that, and I think I, like many other persons, sometimes don't like performances on tracks, but on this occasion, he had to perform to tracks, but he did a splendid job. He was well received, and we always look for opportunities like those in order to get our local artists out there. Yes. And I always say to most of them when we engage them that think of the music festival as a stepping stone to greater things, because you never know who's in the audience. And I've known of occasions over the years where some of the bands have ended up in Amsterdam and Berlin and United States and the Virgin Islands and so on, all because somebody, a promoter or some event organizer, happened to be in the audience and loved what they saw, and so engaged them to come on down. So we have to always bear that in mind when we are performing, that we never know who's in the audience, who's looking at you. Even if they're not in the audience, they may see some of the highlights from the festival. Some friend may have come and shared
Yes.
it and so on. So you have to give it your all and ensure that whatever you put there is a true representation of who you are. And so we are able to take Mr. Bagnall to Temple Rocks, New York, Caribbean Rocks, New York, and we are hoping that if the event continues, if other opportunities like that occur, that we'll be able to do a lot more for our local artists. And while we're talking about that too, I mean, it's important also to point out that even though the festival was not set up for that purpose of promoting the local artists and so on, over the years, as a deliberate policy, we have always included local artists on almost every night of the festival. As a matter of fact, the last calculation we did for the past 19 years, local performers have accounted for roughly 32% of all of the performances on the music festival stage. And that is an incredible number, when you think of it. And so we have always tried to include them. This year is no different. We have quite a huge local contingent on the show this year. And as a matter of fact, opening up the festival this year will be a homegrown show on the Wednesday evening prior to the start of the festival. And these are some of the ways in which we try to engage our local artists and to help them, as they aspire to become, some of the greatest artists out there. And of course, as part of our mandate, we have also set up empowerment workshops and so on. We talk about that later on, and all of these things in an effort to help them along the way as we go forward.
Okay, I am going to come back to the issue of economic viability, and none of you is economists. But what is the cost to the country to host the music festival? I mean, we can talk about economic costs, and we can talk about other kinds of costs, but
the cost usually runs just about $3 million. And of course, there's a government subvention of approximately $2 million. The rest get made up by our sponsors, some very major sponsors. The major ones I speak to is like Tropical, Lime, Now Flow, Carrick Brewery. The major, the ones in the Rams, in the I'm talking about the major tiers ones. And so that helps to bring up that side of it. That's the cost. Now, to my mind, when I look at the benefit side, I'm still one of those who is convinced that we get it back. For example, the $2 million that government puts out as a subvention, when I look at the economic activity, the VAT that is generated as a result of that, think about it. 4,000 people every day, every night going out spending money. VAT 17% is on everything. The hotels they're in, the taxes that they have to pay apart from the VAT, and so when I look at it from overhead, I see where yes, you see the money going out because it's easy to count it coming out of the government coffers into music festival. It seems like it may not be. It might be money that we're not getting back, but I'm convinced that we get it back. And at this juncture, I just want to say, we have been very lucky to have the sponsors we have had over the years. Some of them have been with us since inception, and they've grown with us. But one of the things important to point out is that the music festival has become very expensive to run, and unfortunately, the money that we get in to put on the festival has not kept up with the cost. I'll give you an example. An artist who 8 years ago would have cost $50,000 or $40,000 today, he would not even look at you for less than $300,000. So the artist costs have gone up. It's really incredible, and I usually say only in St. Kitts that we are still charging 100 EC dollars
Entrance fee.
And and that's by design. I think the government has always felt it important to make sure the whole country could be exposed. In other words, not just the middle income or the high income, but the low income can afford the $100, and that's why government has always fought to keep the price at that level. Notwithstanding, someone like myself, as the chairman, who has to look at paying the bills, constantly have to be asking to increase the price. But again, that's my duty. My duty is to ensure that at the end of the day, people are paid. Something that I take very, very seriously. But yes, I mean, I think it's in general, I'm one of those who is convinced that it pays for itself.
Okay.
We have to also look at the tourism value, and so often we look at the gate receipts in isolation of the benefits from the tourism angle. Those of you who follow the Super Bowl and even a regular show on television, the cost to air commercial is incredible. We can't afford it from a tourism standpoint. There's no way we could afford to advertise on any of those stations and so overseas. So basically all that we did, instead of channeling that money into the marketing coffers for tourism, which at the end of the day we couldn't afford to do the ads and the different things and so that we would like to do, we decided we're going to channel it into a festival, and by doing so we will get some of the same marketing advantages, the same opportunity, the same benefits, because of the fact that people would come. Music have a way of drawing people, and so they would come, and by coming they would learn about the destination. They'll be able to tell their friends about the destination, and we can't underestimate social media and the millions that social media reaches on a daily basis. And so those things have a cost, and the cost to get the destination on those channels and so on those media channels is astronomical, and and so we have to always factor in those costs when we are dealing with looking at the cost of the festival. For instance, I mean, some of the performers who have come here, Lionel Richie, for instance, when he landed here, the first thing he started to do is to tweet and to Instagram and those things and so on. I mean, and you're talking about a performer who has millions of followers and so on. I mean, we couldn't reach those persons without, had it not been for the festival, because if we had to advertise to reach them, we don't have the budget. But at least if we do it through a different means, and that is by using the festival as a tool to reach some of those households that normally we would not be able to reach because we don't have the budget.
Also, just to jump on that, the St. Kitts Tourism Authority also will bring in a number of journalists from from all over the world to cover. We host them. This year we're going to bring about 12 to 15 that are so far confirmed. We have about 4 coming from the US, another 4 from the UK, and the rest are usually from the Caribbean region. And these are made up of magazines, there are TV stations, there are bloggers. Right now, the new medium right now is, of course, social media. So those who are blogging and have hundreds of thousands of followers, you're able to reach quite a lot of people. So using the media now to carry forth your message, again, is not as expensive as saying advertising in the Super Bowl or any other major network television. But when these guys go back now and they're right, and we make sure they're right, I mean, we follow up and so forth. We also spend quite a lot of money, of course, on videotaping the music festival. That footage, again, is used in our promotional material to promote the destination. We make sure when people like Tyrese and Lionel Richie, and of course 50 Cent, when they reach and touch the ground, they are tweeting, but we go further and we interview them. We try our best to make sure that they experience the destination, and we catch them on camera experiencing the destination. It goes a long way They have following that are like cults. I mean, from the one percenters to the middle class right down, people want to do exactly what they're doing. And so when they see them enjoying, having a wonderful time in St. Kitts, hey, even if they don't reach, St. Kitts is on their mind. They can talk about St. Kitts and they can share St. Kitts with somebody else who might have the funds to come or is looking somewhere to come. So awareness of destination is quite big. And it's another way really of making St. Kitts one of those top destinations.
I mean, as a journalist, I've done some coverage of the music festival too. I've written quite a bit on the performances of the artists and so on. So I understand the importance of the,
Perhaps you come back to journalism. Just doors wide open whenever you're ready.
Okay. Of course, we live in a very diverse society, a plural society. We have people with different tastes. The diversity of music and cultures and all of that sort of a thing. What has the music festival done over the years in terms of attracting this diversity that we have within the society? Who has the music festival attracted over the years and why?
Well, I think I could start by just listing some.
Yes.
That, going back over the years. We've had persons like Brian McKnight, and you'll notice that as I list them, you'll realize the wide range in terms of the genres of music that they cover. Brian McKnight, Shaggy, Ecstatic, DMX, Hugh Masekela, Dennis Edwards and the Temptations Review. You have Culture, Busta Rhymes, Freddie McGregor, Carlene Davis, Drew Hill, Yolanda Adams, Casey and JoJo, Crucial Banky, Dennis Brown, Bobby Caldwell, Kool and the Gang, James Ingram, Peebo Bryson, Joe, Percy Sledge, The Manhattans, Morgan Heritage, Arrow, Sparrow, Destra, Genuine, Buju Banton, Nas, Barrington Levy, just to name a few, and that's not even exhaustive. So right there, you see that, and I think that's what important, what Allister said, is that rather than go after a specific jazz or gospel or blues festival, what a music festival. And one of the things we try to do is, one time we used students at the CFBC to kind of give an idea of, what kind of music you want to hear, what kind of artists you want to hear, and you kind of take all that in during the year, and then you go, in January, February, we sit down to see who's available, and of course who's affordable, and try to give, covers wide about a cross section as we possibly can.
Okay, for example, some persons, you hear them say, we want a Beyonce, or we want a Rihanna, some of those big names, why can't you cater for these people?
Well, certainly not at $100, but I'm sure, I had the opportunity to see some of those same persons. Fortunate to see Rihanna in Barbados, was fortunate to see Beyonce, Celine Dion in Luther Vandross before he passed. I've seen some of the top rated artists over the past years, but certainly not at 100 EC or 40 US. Most of them was above $200 US. But apart from that, though, we would love to bring the Rihannas, the Beyoncés, and all of those persons to our shows, but economically it just doesn't worth it. I mean, given the size of our population, and even if you were to bring in, even an extra 5,000 persons and so on, the economics is just not worth it, because the dance, as we say in local balance, won't be able to pay for the lights. But I think it's important to point out, though, that it's not just about the performance fee that should be of concern to any promoters, I should add, because the higher the tier of the artist, the more expensive all of the other production costs would be. I mean, of course, I remembered when we saw, I think it was Natalie Cole or some of them in Jamaica a few years ago. The backdrop alone that she used had cost them about over $80,000 US, and this is a backdrop that you must, you know, procure as part of her production, and so the production cost for a lot of these artists, the equipment that they use, the lighting, the sound, you know, all of the things that are necessary to make a great performance, those costs increase as well. And of course, if you know you're dealing with some of the so-called divas and so on, then you know transportation is affected, because obviously they're not flying commercial, they're flying, you know, private jet and so on, and we know how expensive private jet can be and so on. So it's not just about the fee, everything else adds up. And when we start looking at artists each year, we have to always be mindful of the fact that, listen, we can't just think about an artist in terms of the performance alone. We have to remember that there's production as well as accommodation. I mean, there are some artists that have a huge entourage, you know. So we got to be mindful of all of those things. So we take all these things into consideration before making a final decision, because everything impacts the other. So we have to be very careful and so on. But of course, we try our best to do the best that we can, given the resources that we have available. And when we look back at some of the artists that Farron just, you know, read out, and those that came after the Jason Derulos and the Tonys and Lionels and all the others who have performed after and so on, I am often, you know, left in awe, because, you know, I can't believe that some of these people perform right here in St. Kitts. Some of the more established festivals with bigger budgets and greater resources have never had some of them on their festival. I think we have had an incredible journey these last 20 years. We've brought forward some of the best performers to grace any stage. And so I think that we have been able to deliver a product that is exceptional, considering the costs that, you know, to engage these artists, but at the same time the cost that we offer the festival to the public.
I want to add though, just to put it in practical terms, because sometimes people identify better with numbers. For instance, Celine Dion was in Jamaica. The price for Celine Dion was $2 million US for her to perform. You know, we have called some names here that we have gone after. The Mariah Carey's, and you know, when you start talking to the agent, if you start out with anything under $1 million, they would never call you back.
Right.
Now remember,
they're in demand.
They're in demand. I just told you before, our subvention is $2 million. That's EC dollars.
Yes.
Huh? So when you're going to pay $1 million for one artist, $1 million US dollars right away,
bankrupting the country.
So I think sometimes people ask all the time, you know, you should get this and you should get that person, and it's important that they understand what we're working with. It's just very expensive. And again, as Allister indicated, that's just the fee to perform.
Yes.
Then you have to move 20 people. You have to put them in a hotel. You know, it's very expensive.
Yes.